Welcome back, MTG Joe here. Today, we're doing another installment of the weekly meta breakdown where we look at the best performing decks on the MTG Arena ladder. We try to do this each week for each format on MTG Arena: Historic, Alchemy, or Historic, Explore, and Standard. Best of 1, best of 3. Alchemy, depending if there's an event or not, but usually it's not too popular. This particular video is for the Historic best of 1 format. We'll eventually get to best of 3. We just need a larger population of data to be able to articulate what kind of the trends are. And this would be the first look of the new Brothers War set, how it's making an impact in Historic. Notably, all the retro artifacts are legal in Historic. So we're going to see stuff like Wormcoil Engine potentially, Sundering Titan, Char, Belcher, any of those kind of old bordered artifacts that you got in your standard packs, you can play them in Historic. So we're going to focus today on the top 5 decks from November 15th through the 27th. And as always, we get our data from Untapped.gg, companion tool that runs alongside your Arena client, tracks win rates, loss rates, whole bunch of cool functionality. You're able to get a whole bunch of it for free with the link in the video description down below. But don't fret, if not, I will paste all these deck lists in the video description so you can copy and paste them into Arena if you want to try to rank up. So as always, we're going to be looking at Platinum to Mythic Rank for now. There's one deck that we'll be looking at that I had to extend it to Gold as well, just to get a sample size large enough for a win rate, but it's a popular best of 1 deck as well. But we'll jump into it. The top performing deck is, we kind of drilled down this week, is Rakdos Midrange, 66% roughly, 200 games played. So there's usually a couple different configurations you'll see of this Rakdos deck. They've opted to go against the Bloodtithe Harvester for Dreadhorde Arcanist, to return to the Arcanist kind of builds. No Young Pyromancer, no Dragon Rage Chandler, those types of effects. Instead, you're kind of topping out at the Sheoldred package. The big kind of draw engine with this deck is a flipped reflection of Kiki's with the Bloodtithe Harvester. Oh, sorry, with the Seasoned Pyromancer. I've been playing this deck a bit offline as well. I switched this for the Bloodtithe Harvesters. I found the removal from Bloodtithe and just the cycling to be a little bit more advantageous than kind of the effects of Dreadhorde. Wizards is a popular deck. They have a lot of ways to deal 3 damage. Dreadhorde doesn't do anything on its own, while the Bloodtithe Harvester can attack better into some of those 3 toughness creatures and also just be used as removal. The downside with the Bloodtithe Harvester is it gets hit by Stomp, where Dreadhorde Arcanist wouldn't. This list is also opting to go with the full 8 discards, so Inquisition of Kozilek and Thoughtseize. With this here, you're able to get rid of the cards you don't need late game if you're drawing certain copies, with Seasoned Pyromancer or the Fabled Mirrorbreaker to kind of churn through those cards there. A couple copies of Kroxa. Molten Impact is a scalable burn spell. Going with the full Strangle package, just dealing with pretty much all the creatures in the format. And then you have like a Flame Blessed Bolt as an additional removal spell. Notably, this version here is a little bit softer to the Affinity decks because they make 4 toughness. So you have some Molten Impacts that can kind of scale. You can stack. While you do a Fatal Push, that's one thing to just be considering. When you make like the Thopters into the 4/4s, it'd be a little bit of an issue. Going with some Lilianas in this version, Sheoldred on the top end. Sheoldred plays really nice with Seasoned Pyromancer. You get to draw 2 cards, gain 4 life, and kind of go from there. The one thing I found with this particular list as well, they were playing the Dragon Skull Summits. I really didn't like it in the mana base. You only have 8 copies of a dual land, and oftentimes this just kind of screwed up because you're playing stuff like so how it usually plays out is you want to play out your creature lands early because they come into play untapped. You also have your channel lands, so this often just became a tap land. Instead, I just cut these 2 and I played the full 3 Haunted Ridge. Just found it more effective there. Alternatively, as well, you can go Sulphur Springs, the Pain Land. But given that you're already going to be hitting yourself with Thoughtseize, you're a little bit more of a control-y style deck, and the format is fairly aggressive, so I would opt to just go with the Hunted Ridge there. The next deck is Boros Affinity. Speaking of creating 4/4s. So for those of you unfamiliar, it's kind of built around a commander card that was introduced to the format through an anthology. So Retrofitter Foundry. So when you have a Thopter, you can basically just skip all the other modes and then just sacrifice a Thopter to create a 4/4 colorless construct. So you play this on effectively turn 1. So you can go Retrofitter Foundry, Ornithopter, end of their turn, sack it, and you get that. You create Thopters with Barb Spike as well as Yotai, so a lot of ways to make kind of cheating out 4/4s. You got Esper Sentinel for tax and card draw, some Portable Holes for removal, Shadow Sphere for trample and lifelink. Toolcraft Exemplar becomes a 3/2 first striker on combat. Ingenious Smith gets bigger every time you cast an artifact and helps you dig. Mashiko pumps up your team. Yotai can be removal and pump as well. Kind of all packaged in there. It's a Lurish Shell, kind of mixed into there. You also have the Darksteel Citadel, which can be animated in ways with like Yotai as well. So that's the Boros Affinity deck. And now the new deck of the format. So, Broken Combo decks. So this deck technically has no lands, but plays lands. So think of it as Oops All Spells, and it's built around the card called Goblin, Char, Belcher. So this is like a combo card in Legacy that you see. And basically, for 4 mana, you get an artifact. For 3 mana to activate, reveal the top card of your library until you reveal a land card. Char Belcher deals damage equal to the number of non-land cards revealed this way to any target. If the revealed land's a mountain, deals double that damage. Put the revealed cards at the bottom in any order. So, this deck here, what you're trying to do is get out a Char Belcher and then activate it. Because you're playing all the kind of module dual face cards from Zendikar, you technically have no lands in your deck the way it sees it. So you flip through your entire deck and you deal damage to your opponent equal to the number of cards left in your library. Now, how you try to do this, and you can kind of combo kill. So if you use Ironcrag Feet, notably Ironcrag Feet generates 7 mana, and you can only cast 1 spell per turn. There's not a limitation in terms of what you can do with the additional 3 mana. So you pay 4 mana to activate Char Belcher, 3 to then activate it so you can kill them at 4 mana and activate it the same turn. Now, how do you find Char Belcher? Well, Indomitable Creativity, any one of your treasure tokens, artifact tokens, anything like that, will always find the Char Belcher. So that's another way to go. And then you can kind of go from there and kind of combo out. So you make tokens with stuff like Strike It Rich. You can make it with Seize the Spoils. You can make it with Magma Opus. You could kind of cycle through your deck with the Valakut Awakening, put stuff back. And then you have stuff like your lands, your Spikefield Hazards, Shatter Skull Smashings, Kazul's Fury. This could be a land. These are all lands kind of paired into that. And then you got some Strangles for interaction, some Brothers of Hood End for interaction, and then Faithless Looting to kind of find stuff, and then Pact of Negation as a combo protection card. Now, notably, if you cast Ironcrag Feet, and then you cast Char Belcher, and they try to counter, you cannot cast Pact of Negation to counter the Char Belcher. If they try to counter the Ironcrag Feet, you could counter the spell on the stack, but this puts a limitation in terms of your only being able to cast 1 spell. So that's just something to be mindful of if you're playing this deck. Next up is It Wizards, 63%. So really just kind of the configuration differences from week to week. I prefer 4 Mentor's Guidance over the Expressive Iteration because you can play this proactively on turn 2, and it doubles up and gives you 2 cards that you're not with the limitation of having to cast that turn, where Expressive Iteration is really a card you want to play on turn 3 onwards. The flip side of this is if we are seeing more Sheoldred decks in the format, the Expressive Iteration doesn't draw you the cards, it puts it to your hand into exile, so you don't take the damage there. But really this deck, what you're trying to do is play stuff like Symmetry Sage, Soulscar Mage, Balmor, and Dreadhorde Arcanist, get various pumps with casting a bunch of cheap spells, burn spells, stuff like that, and then recast stuff from your graveyard with Dreadhorde Arcanist. You're able to pump up Arcanist's power so you can cast back all the 2 and 3 mana spells as well. You could get haste and a big pump with Reckless Charge, so you can deal large amounts of blitzed damage out of the deck with that. Then I prefer 20 lands, but that's just kind of my preference. And then lastly, this is the deck I said I had to go to gold, but it is a deck you'll see quite a bit. Whether it's good or not, it is a popular deck. So notably, the Elves deck is very good into the Artifacts deck, but pretty average to poor into the Wizards deck. So it's kind of a 3 meta thing. It potentially could race Belcher if it gets a good enough draw. Can kind of go pretty fast. The Rakdos deck is interesting because the Rakdos deck can deal with individual threats very well, but can't deal with very wide boards. So if you can spam going wide, it could be useful as well. So it's an interesting kind of meta take with that. But with this deck here, what you're doing is you have a bunch of accelerants in 1 mana. The Elvish War Master makes tokens whenever another elf enters the battlefield. Dwindling Elites makes multiple bodies. Leaf Crown Visionary gives you a Lord effect plus card advantage. You're able to generate large amounts of mana with Circle the Dream Druids or Elvish Archdruid to pump it up. And then you have Impervious Perfect as another card here. Notably with this list, you're missing Allosaurus Shepherd, which seems odd. So it might be for budget constraints, but Allosaurus Shepherd is definitely something in these elf decks you should be looking to play. Usually you won't see this number of Impervious Perfects. Some more copies of Allosaurus Shepherd. It's a 1 mana 1/1 that prevents your green spells from being countered. And then for 6 mana, you're able to make all your elves into 5/5 dinosaurs. You should also be playing 2 to 3 copies of Castle Garenbridge. So this is actually like not the most efficient elf deck. Let me see if there's another version. Okay, this version looks a lot better. I'm admittedly not a huge elves player, but I know I've played against it. Oh, I've actually never played elves. This list looks better. Let me see if we can get a big enough sample here. Okay, so not enough people are playing this version, but this version looks tighter. I think if you're looking at something like this, you could play Dwindling Elites if you want. This one's looking to use Freyleys to just generate a whole bunch of mana. So some consideration there. Sky Shroud Lookout can find you elves. Finale is also another effect here that you can pump large amounts of mana. So this version here, I don't even like this version. I don't know how people are building these decks. Okay, 3rd time's a charm, right? Like every one of these decks, it's like they ran out of wild cards. Okay, this one looks good. Sorry. So you can play Craterhoof if you want, but you want your Allosaurus Shepherds. You're going to win more often with Allosaurus Shepherds and Elvish War Master. You got your Archdruid Circle and Marwyn in this version. Just all your 3 mana spells can generate more mana. And really what you want to do is just pump that mana into either your War Master or Allosaurus Shepherd. Collected Company kind of plays with that. If you want to play Craterhoof Behemoth, play Craterhoof. Castle Garenbridge, Boseiju who endures. So these are kind of the considerations. Like this version's got a pretty low win rate right now. But you could see kind of the variations of elves. All in all, like the cards you're going to want, you can play around. There seems to be no concise version. I like the Planeswalker in the list. I think it's pretty powerful. The Freyleys, giving you card advantage. Untap tap lets you seek a card. So card advantage all mixed in. So kind of a hybrid of these versions is probably good. Fierce Empath is something that's interesting because you can always tutor your one of Craterhoof. So you can kind of play around with these variations to see what works best for you in the format. In any case, I'm going to wrap this one up. Let me know what you think. Probably going to give this Is It Belcher deck a try on the channel later today. Have some gameplay up on that. But you can always take a look. For those of you who are looking for mono red in historic at least, it's not really good right now. Basically, the Artifacts deck is a pretty tough matchup, and Wizards was always a terrible matchup. And now you have another combo deck that plays sweepers and 1 mana removal spells, so it's a little tough out there for mono red decks. Explorer is a much safer format for it right now. In any case, thanks for watching, everyone. And if you do like this type of content, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And we'll be back with the rest of the formats later this week.